Jesus 911, two-man car, Jesse and Ruben. We're talking about Father Pericone's his article on Vatican II. The title is Vatican II at 60, Stop Cheerleading. It's been 60 years already, Jesse. My goodness.
And there, well, I think Pope Francis and his staff are trying to do Vatican III. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
This whole Synod of Synodality, Ruben, this is what it is. It is Vatican III. And what they want to do is, because they didn't go far enough for their liking, for their taste, they want to finish up what they started at Vatican II. And I mean, this is what we're seeing right now. In fact, the Pope has actually extended it another year. So this is just like, it's just as long as a council. It's going to be about a 2 or 3 year a synod, a synodality, where people are discussing changing the church's teachings. This is the Trojan horse in the city of God right now. Go ahead.
And you see what that synod did in Germany. The cardinals and bishops up there want to introduce same-sex unions and just outright blatant heresy.
Ruben, the synod of synodalities is like throwing an atom bomb into a city. It's just breeding chaos, destruction, and confusion.
Yeah, you can't tell the church, or the laity, hey, what would you like to see? Because the laity, you pointed out how many people are going to mass these days, so they're not going to be prepared to give a good answer to that, because everybody takes the least path of resistance. So
yes,
they're gonna,
because the lady is going to want to sing as the opening song, "The Age of Aquarius."
Yeah, Jesse's going to hum a few bars at the end of the segment.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
So he says, Mr. Weigel seems to be parroting the old thinking of the Septuagenarian and octogenarian shepherds in the church. This old guard is presently splenetic at the cry of young Catholics for their undiluted ancient faith rather than the synodal way that is so giddily embraced and tight-fistedly enforced by their betters. And Jesse, just came to mind, we're going to have these two young guys on that I had a few weeks ago. And we're going to talk to them about their love for the Latin Mass. These guys are 18 and 21 years old. So when you get these people thinking that's only the old folks like Jesse and I that are attached to this Mass, it could be further from the truth. So he goes on to say, how could someone as gifted as Mr. Weigel repeat without embarrassment Roncalli's indictment of 500 years of post-Reformation Catholicism as guarding a precious treasure as though it were an antiquity? He knows better than most. St. Paul's mandate to Timothy, custodi depositum, guard the deposit. Yes, the church jealously guards so that she can boldly proclaim. And indeed she did. And she did it with supernatural gusto during all those centuries, to which Mr. Weigel happily bids a fond farewell. Just
yeah, it seems like George Weigel's dismissive of everything Catholic before 1965. He talks about Father Pericone. He says, then there is this. It was time to raise the bastions that Catholicism has erected and turn its robust institutions into platforms for evangelization and mission in order to engage a deeply troubled modern world. We expect this kind of cant from self-loathing Catholics, but not from a gifted Catholic intellectual of Mr. Weigel's rank. Was that summons due to a momentary memory lapse? Mr. Weigel pleads for a church to proclaim and compassionately witness to Christian truth for the world's healing and sanctification. Surely Mr. Weigel recalls the global and prodigious efforts of the church in the past centuries doing just that. To name a paltry few, first bullet, the Jesuits' monumental missionary efforts in South America, to say nothing of their staggering accomplishments in covering all of Europe with its finest educational institutions once upon a time. Second bullet, St. Isaac Jogues, heroic efforts to bring the holy gospel to the Indians of North America. Third bullet, Father Junipero Serra's breathtaking missionary work and foundations in California. Fourth bullet, the Holy Ghost Father's dazzling missionary and accomplishments in Africa. Fifth bullet, the Maryknoll Father's dauntless work in China, which accumulated for that order countless number of martyrs. Sixth bullet, innumerable religious orders of women who marched into Africa to open hospitals and schools. Seventh bullet, St. Catherine Drexel's founding of the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, specifically to bring the gospel to natives and blacks. Eighth bullet, the St. James Society, which sent scores of priests to work in the missions of South America. Ninth bullet, Mother Teresa's missionary work in India. Again, this all happened before Vatican II, so much for the fact that the church wasn't evangelizing, because that's the intimation from George Weigel, that the church was not evangelizing, that the church was insulated in itself like a closed fortress and not engaging with the world. I just gave you 9 bullets how the church was engaging them with the world and bringing them to Christ.
Hey, do you remember the Amazonian Synod, Jess, what they had up at the Vatican? It came out that some of these I don't know if it was a bishop or some priest, they said they hadn't baptized anybody in
30
Amazon
years.
In
Yeah.
30 years. Unbelievable. So they've lost their zeal. They lost what being a religious is all about. Is saving souls, bringing them to Christ. And it starts with baptism. So Father goes on to say, was all of this evidence of a church obsessed with guarding antiquity? Perchance Mr. Weigel was thinking of a church insufficiently engaging the world on high intellectual matters. In that case, he certainly must know the amazing philosophical and theological work of Catholic scholars in those fortress years who transformed the intellectual landscape. To cite just a few, Jacques Maritain's guest professorships at Columbia, Princeton, and the University of Chicago, all the while publishing some of the most significant works on St. Thomas Aquinas and influencing entire academic world. Etienne Gelson's guest professorship at Harvard and Sorbonne, as well as delivering the esteemed Gifford Lectures at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. Next point is Father Stanley Jockey's impressive oeuvre in reconciling physics and sciences with the truths of the faith. And that I guess that French word is this, it just means the substantial body of work constituting the life work of a writer, an artist, or a composer. Father Gergoud Lagrange, that's a giant in this the Catholic Church, work in Thomistic philosophy and on his polemical works, engaging the philosophies of the day. And the last point, learned Catholic academic societies in every major scientific, literary, philosophical, and theological discipline. Add this to the impressive work of evangelization, the fact of thousands of Catholic schools with an average student population of 1,000 children, seminaries filled to capacity, and novitiates as well, religious brothers conducting some of the finest schools in America. Does all of this sound like a church enclosed in upon itself? This ever mushrooming evidence of Catholic universal reach prompted the inimitable Carl Adam to write in his memorable 1934 Spirit of Catholicism.
Here's what he wrote. What the church wishes to establish is the fact that human reason, while remaining true to itself, can by its own principles advance to a point where God becomes visible as the fundamental basis and ultimate meaning of all reality, and where knowledge passes over into faith, philosophy into theology. Whenever men have doubted or denied the capacity of the human mind to transcend the limits of experience, whenever they have attempted to paralyze or kill man's profound yearning for absolute truth, when the church has come forward in defense of reason, whether against Averroes, the Muslim, and Luther, or against Kant, the secularist, and the more our own age becomes weary of subject idealism and seeks to rediscover the objective world, the more grateful will it be to Pope Pius X that in his much abused anti-modernist encyclical Pascendi, he denounced all positivism, pragmatism, and phenomenalism, and defended the power of reason to transcend and surpass experience, thus exercising those twin bugbears of solipsism and skepticism, which menace all knowledge. And that basically that means is learning things through experience versus learning things through reason. If Vatican II deserves all the encomia, which means praise, right? When you praise somebody's writings, showered upon it by the old thinking, then how does one explain the censorious comment of Pope Paul VI in 1972 that, quote, the smoke of Satan has entered into the church, close quote, lest I be accused of violating post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means we must be clear that there's no cause effect between Montini's lament, that's Paul VI, and Vatican II. But their uncomfortable proximity raises eyebrows. To quote Mark Twain, history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. Clearly, the smoke of Satan was not a consequence of Vatican II, but it does seem to rhyme. Now, here's the only thing that I would disagree with Father, myself. I actually believe that the smoke of Satan was caused by Vatican II. It was happening before, without a doubt. There was already infiltrators before, but I think the smoke of Satan got hotter at Vatican II. Yeah, we already had communists in the church. Yeah, we already had Masons in the church. That's why the Pope wrote an encyclical against modernism. This was already, 60 years before Vatican II. But I think at Vatican II, it was more like the coming out party, like prostitutes at a wedding cake at a bachelor's party.
Malachi Martin wrote a Windswept House about some of those things that were going on, and that was, Satanism had already established itself in the Vatican.
Yes.
Black Mass, and So
these are documented.
Correct. So he goes on to say, moreover, the vigorous stretching that Pope Benedict XVI performed in articulating a hermeneutic of continuity is a demonstration that Vatican II could not stand alone. It contained undeniable weaknesses. They could only be redressed by supplying the necessary unambiguous statements made by the Church's magisterium. Other ecumenical councils never required such embarrassing backtracking. Their reasoning was as tight as a drum and the meaning of their words as clear as the sun. So he goes on to say, isn't it time to move past the old thinking that lauded Vatican II? With all due respect to the Second Vatican Council, it does not meet the demands of a secular world. For that we need a viral, unequivocal, and full-throated Catholicism.
Amen.
Yes, take from Vatican II what was good, but stop the cheerleading. It is simply unseemly of an intelligent and faithful Catholic. Mr. Weigel, isn't it time to admit that the bloom has come off the rose?
Here are 4 documents, Ruben, that many people complain about, that are conservative and orthodox and traditional. The Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy, first of all, that document really hasn't even been implemented over 50 years later, or 60 years now. If you look at Sacrosanctum 54, it says Latin should be kept in the masses and should have pride of place. Paragraph 93 says sacred music, Gregorian chant should be used. That's not being done. The prayers in the liturgy and the administration of sacraments, those prayers were redacted. Why? Because we had 6 Protestant ministers as advisors, and we wanted to make the Mass more welcoming to Protestants. And as Father Ripperger says, remember, you get what you pray for, and you don't get what you don't pray for. If you redact the prayers of the Mass, there's going to be an effect. The second document that is problematic is a decree on ecumenism. Why? Because the language was softened in reference to the Protestants and the Orthodox. We started, we used to call them schismatics and heretics before.
And the Jews, too.
Yeah, and now we're just calling them, separated brethren. And so this has led to the Novus Ordo Mass looking like a Protestant church service in many parishes. And this is why the bishops have never liked apologetics, by the way, because it reminds them of pre-Vatican II Catholicism. We'll be right back. Don't change that dial. Jesus 911.